But before that...
Word from our sponsor.
Is it sponsored yet? Hey y'all. Today on our episode, I have my very dear friend Annie Louie, and actually I don't know your full name.
Mohammed Magdi.
Mohammed Magdi. I was going to call you Mo. And Mohammed
that goes to Mo is fine.
Yeah, and Mohammed Magdi on our pod today. So why don't we start off with an introduction from the two of you?
Cool. I'm Annie Louie. I've been friends with Mel since high school, and that's probably been like 15 years now. Yeah. And throughout that time, we're doing a lot of drama classes together, and I ended up doing that as a career. So being funny in drama led me to becoming a stand-up comedian, and that's how I met Mo.
Yep. I am Mohammed Magdi. I'm originally from Egypt. I live in Hong Kong, and I am here for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival and also to hang out with Annie.
Woo!
Yay.
And also to hang out with her.
Yeah, the whole show is just an excuse for some hangs.
Some
but
hangs.
A very expensive, financially unrewarding hangs.
Yeah, very unrewarding.
Wait, so
high comedy festival.
so what sort of hang? What sort of hang is this? Are you hanging as friends? What are you then?
We don't like to put labels.
Oh, you're not a label guy?
Not a label guy.
What are we?
Not on this call. Not on this. Not on video. All right, fine. You tell them.
Okay, I think we're in a relationship.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think that's fair. That's fine.
There's too much uncertainty in this conversation.
No, we have been together for a while now, and the show that we're doing is also called Too Haram to Handle, and it's about basically long distance relationship and stuff. So jokes aside, we're just dating.
Yes,
also, the reason
dating.
the reason I'm hesitant is that it's boring to just say like you're dating and that's it.
Yeah, that's
because all the
fair.
people I'm meeting here, like her friends and stuff, it's always they have some weird arrangements.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm married, but I'm also open, and I'm gay, but I'm not, and it's like,
It is
I
Melbourne.
feel so lame.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just dating a straight woman.
Hello.
Boring.
It's too traditional.
Too traditional.
But two different religion. That's actually not that common in
Two
Really?
religions. I'm not religious though.
She's not religious.
But you're
I
like-
am a bit.
Yeah. But I think like to a certain point, like there could be tension
your mum
coming.
hasn't had the conversation with you.
No, but she doesn't care. Like my brother is also
Wow.
married to a foreign woman, and at this point, because we're like older, I'm 35 this year. My brother's 39 or 40 this year, and she was like, "Just bring anybody."
You know what? See, it's interesting, right? Because I grew up in, sounds like a very similar background. Same thing, right? When I was younger, parents like, they have this idea in their head.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of like, Aaron, you're 32.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Anything would do.
So I think that's still probably quite an not super conventional in Australia.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we have a joke in the show because it is an interracial relationship like this is not that common, right? Asian and Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And we've been saying that we're doing our show, the marketing is based on racial profiling. So we get them to cheer whether they look like me or look like him.
And it works. Yeah. It's very
So
clear
if we see an interracial couple that looks like us at all, we're like, flyer them, get them to come to the show.
It's going to be interesting if we sit right in the front row, me and
Yeah. So for everyone who's out there, Too Haram to Handle started. What?
Yeah, it started. We have one more week of shows to go. We just added another show for the last day. And it's going to be a big room.
Cheers.
Yeah.
It could be us to like 3 people because you never know the demand. What people are going to be up to.
And there's a lot of
weekend.
artists adding shows.
Are they?
Yeah.
So that's a good
not a lot. I would say some tanked, so they got definitely not adding shows, but some did very well and added shows, and that's the nature of the festival.
The festival goes by so quickly, and people don't wake up to it until very late, and then they're scrambling to go see stuff. So we're here for that.
So the festival's been going quite well because you know how a lot of events and music festivals and things are not selling well these days in this market.
Yeah, I mean, Just for Laughs in Montreal shut down for this year.
Yeah.
So they went,
which is
bankrupt for the year.
Arguably the biggest festival in the world.
Yeah, because that's the televised one.
That's the televised one. And they just
Is that affordability or
yeah, they
it's
messed
not
up
going
their
out as much
finances.
post-COVID?
No, they just messed up their finances. I think they had offered too much at some point, and it's just like, and also Netflix now has their own festival, and they just like crushed them.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, so I think Netflix actually that's probably the biggest reason, but they just quoted like financial difficulties,
Yeah.
which is obviously related to Netflix crushing them.
Yeah, I mean, it's still tough this year. Like the comedy festival last year is still trying to recover some of the costs. So yeah, it's important that people go and support it because these things do shut down. They can
They
shut
do.
down.
And because the Melbourne Comedy Festival is a registered charity, you can actually go online and see their finances. This is not a secret.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you could just find it. Like I'm not.
Yeah, interesting hack. Because it used to be an accountant. Like, as an accounting degree.
I have an accounting degree, yeah, but I'm also
I am
a
an
full-time.
accountant.
Same person.
Yeah, we're the same person. Just from, yeah.
But I still practice accounting.
Yeah.
So,
And Muslim.
well, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to go out for coffee.
Too haram.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can just go find it. It's not secret, and they did lose money. I think the last year and maybe the year before too.
Yeah, look, it's a recurring trend. I mean, what we now, we're in mid-April. The news this week is that more festivals are going to shut down. The funding is just not, it's not feasible.
But before we get into how both of you started your comedic path, a question that we do tend to ask our guests is what content, book, TV shows that you've been consuming. There's no purpose to this question. We're just curious on what you're watching right now.
You want to start?
I've been reading memoirs, trying to write a sample book chapter, maybe this year, so I can send it off to some publishers and see if they want to pick it up for a memoir. And I've been reading one by Jess Ho, who worked in hospitality, like fine dining restaurants, and I'm still going through, I wonder how she gets herself out of this, but basically she's an alcoholic at this point and like running herself into the ground working in hospo in Melbourne, and I think she went to our high school because it talks about a select entry girls' school, and in her era, which would have been, we didn't have so many choices of select entry schools.
So
there's only two, one girl, one boy.
Yeah, she's a bit older, and she talks a lot about the traumatic childhood that she had with Asian parents who she thought was normal, how much she was neglected and emotionally abused, but turns out it wasn't. She went to a mental health facility, and then she actually broke up with her parents, like became, what do you call it, like estranged from your parents.
Yeah, when you legally separate from your parents.
So it kind of reminded me of you when you came to Australia, because at the age of like 17 she separated from her parents and she had to fend for herself. She actually had to work a job while finishing high school and pay the bills, which is a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, not that you were like emotionally abused, but you also had to come to Australia independently of your parents and live in an apartment by yourself.
With cousins who did take care of me, but yes.
Can I ask an ignorant question? What is a select entry school? I'm not...
Great question.
She told me many times, and I had the same question, and I never asked.
It's one where if you're academically gifted, you take a test and then you go to a school with other people who are.
So in other words, it's an all Asian school.
Well, we have sprinkles of non-Asians.
Yeah.
Shocking. I mean, definitely not white people.
Also, when we met Asians,
token white.
when we met Asians, we also have South Asians as well. So it's definitely a sea of like brown and yellow.
Which made us think it was okay to call brown people curries because we were like immersed in the community, you know, and then we came out and were shocked.
Also, 20 years ago, things were different.
Yes. No. I still call them that, but I don't know.
So I'm friends with like people who are from that background. They're still like Jackie would let me call her that.
Yeah, there you go. The safe, warm bubble.
Also, what is wrong with calling someone something delicious? Like,
that's true.
You know, it's so positive.
The only time someone called me out for it was a white guy at law school. They're like, you can't say it.
No, if I call you guys dumplings, it should be.
That's adorable.
It's exactly. See, it's adorable.
Yeah. Like, why can you name your pets that and not call other people?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Let's bring it back.
Growing up in Malaysia, comedy and jokes were often racially driven. Growing up in Malaysia, back then it was fine. You can't say it now, right?
Sure.
Went to a comedy show when Douglas Lim is Malaysian. He did a show here, and he made some jokes, and I could feel the whole room going, "Can we laugh?"
Yeah.
I think it's a bit like that at our show as well.
At our show, it can be like that, especially when it's mostly Asian. Because, which is to me is very almost like schizophrenic because I'm performing in Asia. That's where I'm based, and my audience are usually Asians, but who get it.
Right.
And I'm making jokes about them, and they understand that this is in jest, so they are laughing.
Yeah.
And then I come here and I see Australian Asians who are so uptight. I'm like, you're not even living
The word here is politically correct.
Politically correct in
I'm gonna call them uptight because that's what they are. And it's like, yeah, it's so guarded, but like I'm making jokes about living in China, about Chinese people. That's not them, actually. You know.
I wonder, have you done a tour in the US?
No.
Because I reckon that would be worse.
Right.
Right?
Well, I feel like they've seen so much stand up that they would be on board because there's such a range of political comedians. But here, or in Asia, they're still learning what stand up is.
Yeah,
so
right, okay.
I think they're not as comedy educated yet.
Yes. I agree with that. I think in the US, there is like, because it's such a huge market, so there is basically all kinds. You will definitely find the rooms that are even more uptight than here.
Yeah.
But you can also find the rooms who get it because they consume so much stand-up. And then you also find the rooms that are like super hard, like right-wing, when you can just go and say crazy stuff. So, yeah.
Your show would not fly in Malaysia.
Yeah, there you go. We're not taking it.
Not with this title. But I
Yeah.
performed in Malaysia many times.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
regular material. It's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
none of it. Well, not none of it. Some things made it to this show, but like my other material is not particular. But I was at the Crack House that is now shut down.
Oh!
Yeah, it's not related to me at all. But that was the main comedy club that was like editing flies there.
Yeah, nice.
Now I think there's one called by Harith Iskandar, who you probably know.
Yeah.
Called Joke Factory or something like that.
Haven't heard of that one. no.
Joke shop, but I think that one is like a little bit more
Comedy.
sanitized. Yeah.
So you hear it from here first. Annie might be releasing a memoir at some point.
Probably. Stay tuned. Yeah, I will be performing in Malaysia as well. So
nice.
we are doing a comedy documentary for ABC International, and I've set a challenge in the story of the doco that I need to write a brand new set in Malaysia. So it gets progressively harder. The first challenge is, well, they're going to film us performing in Oz, which is obviously easy mode. Then in Hong Kong, because I've been there a few times now and done the shows and I get it. I get the audiences. And then in Indonesia, we're going to go to Jakarta and I'm going to try and write some observational stuff in a set. And then the last stop will be Malaysia, where I'm not allowed any crutches. So maybe you can give me some
When is
funny
it scheduled?
observations.
When is it scheduled?
Next month. Yeah.
May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle May.
Yeah.
You're literally talking about my two backgrounds.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to know where to
begin?
Where to begin? Like, where are things funny there in the city, and what do people like to laugh about, or you think hasn't been mined enough for comedy?
Well, I think interestingly for Malaysia and Indonesia, right, is your audience going to be Chinese based, Muslim based? Because I think they will then have different
Yeah.
things to laugh about.
From my experience, because I've performed in Malaysia a few times, it's mostly, I would say it's at any given show, it's 60 to 70% locals who speak English. Like locals who are like international school kids
It would
or
be.
just like well off kind of.
Yeah.
And then expats.
Yeah.
Or like Singaporeans or
And
whoever.
I find the people that attend these shows get it.
Yes,
They get it.
exactly.
But it's when it spreads and people are like, sorry, what did they say?
Yeah. But like they were never like, even the ones that are like, let's say in a hijab or something or at the shows, they were, I've never
Oh,
seen
no,
like
I mean,
a-
they rock up to the show for a reason. They know what they're expecting.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
What about you, Mel? What content have you been consuming?
The last thing I read was rereading Kitchen Confidential by
Oh.
Anthony Bourdain.
Oh.
Great book if you have not read it. It's like basically it's his rise to fame. Like this book is the reason why he got so big.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone gets kind of his story wrong, that he was a celebrity chef first and then wrote the book. It's actually the opposite. He was doing well, okay, but he was not a TV personality or anything. He wrote that book first as like a secret like look on like the life of chefs and like high end restaurants and stuff. And then he also his battle with addiction and stuff like this. But obviously he's a super charismatic guy, and actually I attribute part of my draw to stand up was from him.
Really?
Because I liked his lifestyle of traveling around the world and just like
wow.
talking to people.
Yeah.
But I have no interest
My
in being a
dream job.
chef. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but
I
I
don't mind
actually
being a chef though.
Oh.
but yeah, like I was a fan of him before I left Egypt. Even I would watch his shows and stuff. Yeah.
So why are you rereading the book?
I read it years ago and I kind of forgot that some of the details. It's also super interesting, and it's literally one of the best selling books. Like consistently has been best-selling
Like
for...
the Bible.
Yeah. Except that this one is real.
It's getting hot in
Let's
here.
get your podcast on negative PR.
Yeah.
We'll shoot it up the iTunes chart.
There you go, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Muslim comedian trashing the Bible.
Yeah.
But you know what's really interesting, talking about just the Muslim community, in Melbourne, in Victoria, Melbourne, we recently in Victoria Market had like a Salam Fest.
I was just there this morning.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
What is a Salam
Yeah, what's
Fest?
this?
It's to celebrate Eid, right?
Oh,
so
yeah, no one told us.
yeah, well, it's on. I assume it's going to be on again throughout the week. But
I want to go.
it's a whole bunch of
Halal food and
communities,
stuff?
halal food communities
God
coming
damn.
together, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting for me, so I grew up in Malaysia, Eid is a certain type of Eid, right? But you go there and there's people from all over the world, like you know,
Sure.
from Egypt, from Africa, from all sorts of places. It's just nice to get together, really, when you're away
Yeah.
from home.
Yeah, because we went to a halal expo. There was nothing there. There was really
That was
where's
in
all the
Hong
free
Kong.
food?
Yeah.
I want free food. Yeah.
It's not free, you have to pay.
Yeah, no, but there
But
was
still,
no
if there's a good
food.
selection of it, I'm
Yeah.
happy to pay. If it's like, you know, food from, Morocco or something.
Yeah,
or-
So
it
it
was really
was Iraq food. We had, me and my brother separately had camel burger. You had camel
I had a
burger.
camel
too.
burger this
Hell
morning.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was some Senegalese food. Like, just...
Yeah. Sure, I want to go. Can you take me?
Yeah, we'll have
I'm so useless here because I'm not from here and she's driving and I don't drive, so I'm even more useless.
Yeah,
I don't
fair enough.
drive too.
Oh, there you go. We should hang out and get lost together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just walk in the middle of the street together.
But the thing I wanted to say was, I think it was actually, so the festival was quite big and there was a lot of people. And then my brother recently did a collaboration for halal food of some sort, a food collaboration. And they were saying the Muslim community in Melbourne is quite big. So I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
whatever you're saying, I'll get the support of
Yeah. There you go. You'll be. The problem with the Muslim communities that I've seen in a lot of places, it's not really a problem. My problem is that like there's certain level of religiousness that you can't act. Like our show's called Too Haram to Handle. So sometimes we have been flying around like Coburg and stuff.
Yeah.
But now I can look without even entering the restaurant or the shop. I'd be like, that's not our target. Because now they're too religious.
Yeah,
So if I go Too Haram to Handle, like get the fuck out. Yeah. So I have to like pick like I wouldn't say open minded, just the more liberal side Muslims.
Yeah.
Or Middle Easterns or like Christian or atheist
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah. So not all of them are accessible to me even. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we might try and read that book.
Yeah, no.
It might actually make me quit accounting and become a chef.
Yeah.
I may not travel the world as a chef. but-
I mean, it glamorized. I mean, he ended up. Spoiler alert! He ended up committing suicide like years. Not on the book.
Yeah.
Like we know that again. I'm
Like
not.
the
Sorry.
book.
That's not a spoiler. That was in the news.
Yeah. That was actual news. That was like 20, 30 years later after he wrote the book. But he has always battled with addiction and stuff. So it depends on your personality. Some parts would maybe glamorize that kind of life, and some parts would be like it's also a warning book of like yeah.
It's funny how both of you are reading books about addiction. Like there's like hints of like
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. You have been watching something though, like the
Physical one.
physical one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've never
Physical
watched it.
100 season
It's a good
2.
show.
Yeah.
I haven't watched season 2 though.
How many hot
Oh,
guys
yeah.
are there this
How many
season?
hot guys? Oh, I would say the same amount. Yeah, they've kept it. They like to be consistent. You know,
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
amount of like jacked women and also
I wonder if it's
same amount
50-50.
of-
I wonder if it's 50-50 male and female.
No,
Do they start off with?
Oh,
I think it's 50.
I
No,
think
they don't.
No, there's still
Yeah.
more men. And I was actually talking to my brother about this with Physical 100. Don't you kind of, a little part of me wish that they have categories for women as well? Because
Yeah, it's a big debate, right? Because I
Yeah.
was saying that, well, if you have a trans competitor, this is the perfect world because they're not by gender, so you can just throw everyone in the mix. But it does mean the women get eliminated a lot earlier.
Yeah.
it's just women would.
So it's the same challenges for all genders.
Yeah.
Oh, same
Yes,
time.
yes.
Yes.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, naturally, you will have. There's no. I don't think I'm saying anything crazy
No,
here.
no.
Like you
Yeah.
naturally, you will have. A men will have an advantage. By
Overall, I mean, some
Overall.
challenges I can see why they're skewed more towards the
A lot of the
females,
challenge-
But,
no.
Yeah, but also,
most
yeah.
of them will be strength.
yeah, of course, but you can bring in like Ronda Rousey and she can kick the butts out of any man alive, really. But she's an exception, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of these jiu-jitsu martial arts
Yeah,
types
yeah.
that have been able to. They pick a man as their opponent and they win.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Some of the
Few of
boxing.
them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But some of the challenges, like for example, not spoiling anything, requires you to move something that's 150 kilos, right? Like with a distance of whatnot, right?
Sure.
So like how many women can do that.
Exactly.
Like even if you're not going to go on TV, like in real life, how many people can do that?
It's very hard to move 150
Yeah.
I don't have move 150 of anything.
Not even tickets.
No.
We can't.
Not tickets, not like rice on my bowl. That's too many things to move. No thanks.
Well, actually, speaking of tickets, and we talk a lot about your show.
Yes, thanks for the plug.
No.
Keep plugging, don't stop.
Yeah, 21st of April, we have an extra show that we just added also at Town Hall before our original show. So now we're at like 5:30 and 7:15 or whatever the fuck. Yeah,
Get your tickets getting quick.
yeah. Link there somewhere.
I want to get into your career a little bit and kind of how you got into it.
How we got here.
Career, yeah. So very keen to just have a bit around, how you got into your journey into comedy. And I know you talked a little bit about that earlier around, drama, finding your way into comedy. Maybe a bit more around yourself and your background, but then also how your journeys differed, and then meeting in Hong Kong. Yeah. So I suppose maybe we'll start with Annie. How did you get into it?
I went in through a competition when I was 16 years old. So the longer story and the deeper meaning of life story is that I had an accident at 16, and that led me to wanting to just try everything before I die, because I was like, oh man, I had a brush with death. Time is limited, and you don't know when you could just walk into traffic accidentally. So then I spent that time recovering, watching stand-up DVDs, and I always wanted to try it but didn't have the guts. So then I entered this competition and was a national finalist, and then we got to perform at the comedy festival at the town hall, and I got hooked on that. And then I later did a Bachelor of Journalism, but there was still that fire of, I want to perform, and then quit my office job, was doing another competition that the comedy festival runs for adults, but I didn't get through. Like I tried twice and it was just bad. And that led to me finding that fire and using it to make my own solo show, where I got my friends to come, and I thought, oh, okay, you can do it independently. Just get a room, get some friends around, and you're performing comedy and you can make a bit of money. So since then, I've been working for 6 years for myself as a full-time comedian. Wow.
Simone mentioned in our previous eps, she's like, I think she had a conversation. So Simone from episode 9, if you want to have a quick listen, she mentioned that she had a conversation with you about starting your own thing as well. And she's like, if this doesn't work out, then it's all on me.
I was really impressed by her, and inspiration goes both ways, because she was the first person who ever gave me a business card of theirs that was like my age. And I'm like, you can do this? And she goes, yeah, you just print them.
You just print them.
Yeah, and that was the first thing that physically confirmed what you can be, even if you don't fully believe in yourself yet. So just because I had a card that could say comedian, writer, producer on it, it just made me feel so much more legitimate. So that plus making a website kind of fought off that imposter syndrome.
I started in Shanghai, so I come from Egypt, as I said, and back in Egypt, growing up with like YouTube and the rise of the internet.
This is a lesson in communications 101.
The rise of it. We're in the same generation, though.
But I think we're a little behind because Middle East, things.
Fair enough.
Not even like trashing it, historically things like fashion trends and stuff like this arrived. So the internet was also like a little behind. So by the time I discovered it was like Russell Peters and Eddie Murphy. So I just like watched like whatever's on YouTube really, but I just liked stand up, but I was just like a consumer of it. And when I moved to China, which is a long story why I moved to China, not that interesting for this podcast, but when I moved to Shanghai, I was just casually mentioning to a friend that I never watched a stand up show and I really like live. And he said, oh, there is a stand-up comedy club here. And I've never been to one. So I was so excited. And I didn't even know what the difference is between different nights, how they build them. So when we went, it was an open mic night. And I don't know what that means. But I didn't sign up. I just went to watch. So I'm like, because it was an open mic night, there's a lot of amateurs, obviously. And even the MC would say, this person's first time. I'm like, anyone can perform? Not knowing exactly what that is. And at the end of the night, he said, oh, we're always looking for new talent if you want to sign up. And I would just be like, I'll do it. But it was for the next week. So they emailed me the next day going, your spot is confirmed for next week. And I like panicked. I almost can't. I think I wrote the email. I never sent it.
Yeah.
That would have like changed. It's one of these like movie moments. When you're like, I would have sent that. It completely changed
the path.
Yeah, but I didn't send it. I'm like, oh, well, what's the worst that can happen? What I will do is that I will fill the room with my friends. So at least it looks like I'm telling stories to my friends. So for the whole week, I'm just like panicking, writing whatever jokes that I think work. And the room was quite small. So there was like maybe 30, 40 people. And everyone was my friend in this room that night. So when I went up, it was like cheering and clapping. And everything I was saying was getting like huge laughs. Like I think, actually the best on that night, which is insane. Funny thing is, like, the guy who runs the club goes, hey, you're good, like, come back next week. But of course you don't want to tell. He's like, a common mistake that newcomers make is to tell new jokes. No, you should work on this set. So come back with the same set next week and work on it. I'm like, okay, but that means I don't bring my friends because I don't want them. And that's when I learned that what I did was not stand up. That was just like me making my friends laugh, and it was objectively now 12 years later a horrible set. So I go the second week, do the same set, and die to like strangers. It's just like a movie. Like actually, like you get crickets.
Bombed.
You bomb completely, and I kept. But because I got what we call the bug the first time, you get that hook. You get that adrenaline rush. I know what it feels like, so it's just now I want to chase it, but legitimately without my friends. And it took me like a few months to actually figure that out. Like I think the first like decent joke I wrote was like maybe months later.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And that was 12, did you say 12 years ago?
I started now we're 2024. I started in late 2013. So yeah, 11, 12 years ago. Yeah. Long time. Yeah.
I know this is going to be a quick segue, but have you ever watched the show The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
I haven't seen it. It's been recommended a few times.
I watched the first couple of seasons. I think it like now there's too many. But I think
that's up to season 5. I've gone tired after season 3.
Yeah.
But that whatever you just said, it's basically an up and budding comedian that's based off a couple of different comedians in New York.
Yeah.
How they rise up to be like how she rose up to be the prominent female comedian in New York City.
Yeah.
So whatever you just said kind of reminded me of like scenes
her
from
story
there.
weaves in and out of like real life comedians. So one character that is portrayed there with his real name is Lenny Bruce, who is one like legendary comedian from New York, and there is an actor who plays Lenny Bruce with his name Lenny Bruce, and he is also like one of my idols as well in terms of like. But he also, the reason being like back then in the 60s I think or the 50s. He got arrested many times for just saying things that at the time were not allowed to say, but actually now we're like, it's in our everyday conversation. So like back then it was like taboo, for example, to talk about like black people being part of their lives or something like this.
You can't say pregnancy.
Yeah, there were so many things that were just like now you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But back then, but he's the one who's like, I'll go up and say it. And he would get arrested after shows.
Which is interesting because now what I'm seeing is that you could say things 20 years ago that people are getting penalized for today.
Exactly.
It was okay 20 years ago.
Yes.
This sounds like the opposite.
Exactly. So now he would be rolling in his grave. If he performs in Melbourne today, he would die again. Oh, man. Yeah.
No, interesting journey. 12 years is a long time. And you, 7 years ago, you decided to take the leap.
Went full time, but it's actually the same amount of time. So I started at 16, now I'm 30, so... Yeah, that's 14 years since I first started. Yeah.
And so there's a lot. Sounds like the common theme is you have really good friends.
To start with,
you will need their support.
I think so. Look, I think it's the support, right? And I think for me, growing up, and we talk a bit about this on our podcast, but growing up in a typically Asian family, how did your families take it?
My mum, because she came all the way from China, from a small town, she didn't know what to expect. What are your kids supposed to do in high school? What are they into? What's extracurriculars? And my dad, being very traditional as well, didn't let us do much in the way of only academic stuff should be allowed. So if you're not at home reading a book, what the heck are you doing? So it was a bit of a struggle to introduce like the concept of doing drama outside of school to them. So in some ways it was good because they never placed expectations on us to be a doctor or lawyer or anything like that, but you should definitely still try hard in school, and whatever you do, you should be good at it. And now my mum says as long as you're happy. So because my dad's passed away, she's pretty chill about, we just convince her that like we're doing really well, and she's like, yeah, okay, good, that sounds good.
Yeah, we're on our 4th bank loan. She has no idea.
Does she come to your shows?
Yeah, she comes. I think she only understands a little bit of the show, and she always focuses on the swearing, and she says, you swear too much. But also, how do you memorize so much content? Like, that's the thing she is most fascinated about, which to us is probably one of the easiest things, because the rest is trying to make people laugh and, like, have good reviews for the show and stuff like that. But I think maybe, you know, regular muggles are just very...
Regular muggles?
Muggles, non-comedians, civilians are just so impressed at how do you memorize everything?
Yeah. Mine, they don't... Because I've lived abroad for so long, they are also kind of disconnected from what I do in terms of, like, just general, like, hobbies and stuff. But they didn't take it seriously for the longest time. Because I've had day jobs for until, like if it's completely full-time involved in comedy, I would say 2016 or 17, when it was the last time I had like a office job.
A 9 to 5.
An office job.
But then also during COVID, because everything was dead in Hong Kong, I also did that for like another year working for like a whatever company.
Yep.
But since I've left, they were worried. Like since I did it like basically full-time, they were worried for a while. But then they're like, well, you're also living in a very expensive city. You must be making money somehow.
You must be able to afford to live in there.
Yeah, and I think one time I did a show with comedian Jim Gaffigan, who's huge, like American comedian. I was opening act, and I think I sent this photo to my family, and they looked him up, and he was like on Forbes list as one of like the highest paid comedians, and they're like, okay, he's legit. He's working with
Validated.
Yeah. So that also like kind of helps cement like, we don't understand it, but you seem to be doing fine. So yeah, I think that's where it stopped.
Yes.
They still don't get. My dad passed away, but like my mom's kind of similar trajectory when she's just like kind of chilled out now in terms of like work or like relationships and stuff. Now she's like, "Are you safe?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then
I go home safe tonight. It's okay.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of like just like, you know, as long as you're fine kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? So I experienced this with my parents. I'm still in an office job, but when it was younger, it was doctor, lawyer, accountant,
right,
engineer. You know, and then 6 years ago, it'd be like, so what do you actually want to do? I was like, whoa, mom, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, and you know what I think it is? Her friends' kids and my parents' friends' kids they've gone into comedy, gone into acting, and they're like, oh, there is another path.
Yeah.
You know? That's good.
Yeah,
Open their mind, but a bit late.
I know, time has changed.
Yeah,
You know?
also like there are countries, like at least for me, in my entire extended family, the richest person by light years is a football player who did not really finish high school. Like, you know, for football, he's also my little brother's age. He's about not even 30. And he played for Aston Villa in
oh, wow.
Yeah, he's like a professional football player. And his side of the family, so he's actually my mom's cousin.
Yes.
So my mom was over 60, that kid is less than 30-year-old. So he's a very late baby. And his side of the family is actually particularly poor. Like we're like middle class, we're just like whatever. Like his side of the family was not really doing well. And because of him, he's now supporting his entire family. And it's just like that also shows now that like you don't have to have a fucking... So you don't need to be a surgeon to make a lot of money.
No.
You can also be an artist or a football player. And he's like the richest person we know.
I mean, you also got to be really good at your sport or
talent.
Of course.
Whatever it is, I think the same standards apply that we expect you to be good at it, at least, you know. Yeah. Like, there's no way either of us could be starving, like, truly. Like, we just dabble in, like, you know, making people laugh every now and then. We brought the same ethic to this creative job.
Yeah.
Feels like, I think the sort of the theme that I'm getting is basically, as your parents, even though they might not have known what you were doing, they're just happy that you're doing fine. Like, they don't have to understand it entirely, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I understand, Mo, you are also a co-podcaster of a very successful and long-standing podcast in Hong Kong. And given obviously that we have we're currently on a podcast currently, I'm very...
In case you didn't know.
Is any of this on?
Hello?
Are we just here for fun? Yeah. I'm just curious to know, like, since how long have you been podcasting again?
Like almost 5 years, I would say. Yeah, I was in and out of it because it started with 2 other guys. Like now one of them is a co-host, but one like left the country, so he handed it off to me. But I was usually like either a guest or like a guest host.
Yeah.
So I was like familiar with the whole process. And so one guy, his name is Andy Curtin, who's now actually based in Melbourne. He used to be based in Shanghai and Hong Kong, so we had a very similar journey. And he started with comedian Vivek Mahbubani. Vivek is a Hong Kong legend. He is ethnically an Indian comedian, but he is born in Hong Kong and speaks fluent Cantonese. So
I hate those people.
Yeah, he's also the hardest working person I know by like huge margin. He's like, you've obviously met him as well many times. He's a workaholic, and his work ethic is he has a very strong compass. But yes, it's him and me doing the podcast. It's called Ho Ho Hong Kong, and it also morphed over the years. So in the beginning it used to be centered around the guests, so we'd always have guests. But during COVID, because we didn't really have access to guests and we both hate Zoom, we didn't want to have guests over Zoom.
Yeah.
So it was just the two of us. And actually coming out of COVID, now having access to guests again, our fans don't like having guests most of the time. Unless we have someone like a really special occasion. It's just us now. We either talk about, it's a comedy podcast, but there's a lot of insight between the two of us on like what's happening in Hong Kong and the comedy scene. Like, Hong Kong is always like something wacky is happening because it's such a rich city that our problems are fucking dumb. So it's
true
funny.
definition of first world problems.
Exactly. Yeah. All of our problems in Hong Kong are first world problems. So we make fun of that. Yeah.
I mean, that's nice. I didn't know that the fans don't like guests because I've been on the podcast probably 5 times.
They never
now.
liked you.
Like you just keep forcing me in. So they keep shoehorning me into the podcast. But they have a Patreon and it's a WhatsApp group as well, and they get to comment on things that they heard in the podcast. They recently latched onto this week's episode where I talked about stealing a napkin unsuccessfully tried to steal a napkin from a vendor at a food court, but it was not the place exactly that I was eating in. And he was there, and this auntie just screamed at me, like she had eyes at the back of her head, and she just screamed at me. And then it made the WhatsApp group go off, and they were talking about all the places where like similar things happen, and they have to pay for tissues and things, and we're here in Australia with like fat wads of free napkins.
Yeah.
I have a thing, a bit of a tangent, but I have a thing where I can't have my hands dirty for more than 2 seconds.
It's
even
actually
if I'm
a proper OCD.
It's an actual OCD.
So when I eat fries, I'll eat a fry and I'll brush my fingers off.
Oh, we are the same person.
Yeah,
this is freaky now. This is actually freaky.
I think you two are in a relationship.
All right. Turn off the camera.
So this is the origin story of how we met.
Yeah, exactly. Documenting this on the 14th of April, 2024. Cut to our wedding.
Okay, you know what I think it is? It's because I grew up eating with my hands.
Yes, same.
Right?
Yeah,
You get
same.
it, right?
Yeah.
So,
but yeah,
Is it all foods or just fries?
all foods. Like
All
once I
foods.
put food down, I kind of have to brush
Yes,
it off.
thank
Just a little
you.
bit.
But
Mentally,
what
I'm
kind of like feeling do you get if you don't? Because if it's like kind of like you feel kind of ill, that's like proper OCD.
No, I don't feel ill, but I need to
I
get
just
it
feel
off.
annoyed. I'm like,
yeah,
if I just get a little bit of off,
Yeah, back home where my mom's house, I have a towel, like my own towel that she that's like I am the guy with the towel on the table, and even if we have guests, I'm like cleaning my hands on the towel. It's my
It
house.
makes me think babies with a blankie. You like he has a special
Self-soothing.
blankie.
Yeah. But eating burgers, same like grease on my hands. No bueno.
I eat a burger with one hand. I can't do 2 hands. It's really weird. I don't.
Oh, wow.
I'm like this. I can't use 2 hands.
So you
on a
could never
burger.
be on the Hungry Jack's Whopper ad.
No, I couldn't. Hold it like this.
I'm left-handed as well, so I eat with like whatever my left hand, but I can hold things with both hands. But I can't have anything on like food on my hand for more
So
than.
COVID would have been easy for you because you're always cleaning.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. At some points, my hands were just bones from all the.
Deep bit in sanitizer.
Yeah. Anyway, what was the
I
standard about?
was shocked to discover you're not left-handed. I was hanging on there, being like, "Tell us you're
No,
left-handed."
no. I think we're
mirroring
mirroring
each
each other.
But if we're finishing each other's sentences, this is adorable
Shit,
and
this is real.
homosexual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. Now you're interesting in Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
I don't have to
finally
find you someone else now.
The pool has widened.
Do you also have a podcast related thing, Annie, that you like to
Yes,
share?
I'm going to start doing a podcast for the first time ever. It's also a video podcast, so we're filming it, but me having chats one-on-one with some other comedians about wedding disasters. And I'm a wedding celebrant. That's also one of the side hustles that has helped me become a full-time comedian too, because that kind of gives you an extra source of income. And this podcast is going to launch later this year, and I'm going to have lots of fun guests. So I'm excited for that, because I couldn't do a podcast by myself. I don't know how people do it. Some people have like a one-on-one just
I can't do that.
No, Mel said that to me. How does someone just sit
and
and talk?
Yeah. Well, for stand-ups, like, we're used to talking
that's true.
you know.
But you get feedback.
No, but you get feedback from
That
the
is
audience.
true. I think you do it long enough. In the beginning, yes, I imagine, I don't even remember anymore, but I imagine like first 2 months it was still like not comfortable for me because there is no that feedback. But then once like, we have a good system because our patreon.com/hohopod for $5 a month you get bonus content. So for the people on the Patreon, we do connect with them on WhatsApp. So we have like a private group for them, and they give us like, that's like the honest feedback. And it's also, some of them are our fans for years, like even when we were in Shanghai. So it's just like loyal fans. And because we get that feedback, so now we have a system. Sometimes you're like, hey, what was going on there? Like, you sound like you have a cold or something. So I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention. And they're very honest with us. And sometimes they DM us if the group is like too much. We would get like really honest feedback. So I think based on that, we just get used to it.
That's really interesting, because I've always wondered how Patreon works for like creators. And I don't know if it's not that I've researched into it, but it's interesting to know that that's how it works.
You have to be consistent, because I thought about it, and the best advice I got was that Patreon is like a puppy. It's not just for Christmas, it's for life.
Yes.
Like, these people will come knocking on your door if you didn't release on time, or what are you doing with my money? All that.
Of course.
Oh yeah, because you
you're charging a monthly subscription, so they need something for that. And some of them are nice enough that, because the Patreon most of the time is quite low, so some of them are actually putting in the money genuinely to support them.
Yes.
They don't want to listen to they don't care, right? They're happy with the free episode, and they're happy to support an artist. But a lot of them actually do listen. So the fact that, we have had it for so many years, and of course, just like anything, depends on the economy. Like during COVID, we lost half the Patreon, which is to no fault of anybody. Now we're building it back up again.
But it also enabled you to buy better equipment, which I think is fascinating.
All our podcast equipment is bought with Patreon money.
Oh wow!
And any podcast related cost, we do it with Patreon money. So the fact that it also enables us to cover our costs is great. Yeah.
I think this actually lends itself really well to like the next question I would ask you two, as like entertainers as well, and podcasters, future podcasters for Annie. Where do you see the future of podcasting go right now? Like, obviously now, I think there's heaps of podcasts out there. I think in terms of barriers of entry, it's probably quite low as well, depending on how well you want the quality of your sound and videos or like recording to be.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there. So where do you see this heading?
I want to jump in and say video. It's all about the short clips now, which they're not doing, and hopefully when I go to Hong Kong, I can help them out with that, which is great that you've already got that set up. But a lot of people don't care to listen to the full podcast at all. They want to scroll their feed, and they actually still feel as connected as a genuine podcast listener, because they get to know you, but through the short free clips. And then there's a studio that I'm working with on this Wedding Disasters podcast that has a studio for creators to use and rent. Like, anyone, even you, can go and rent it, and they have 4K 3-angle cameras already set up for you.
I was a guest on a podcast there. It's really well equipped. Like, you just, like, as a guest, you just sit down and they start recording. It's very, very good. Yeah.
But the problem is that so many people are also using that studio, so the clips do look similar because you're in the same room, right? So now you have to give yourself another edge. Like, you've got the clips, but now how are you going to stand out with decorations, or do we need some digital screens behind you to distinguish which podcast it is? So yeah, I think with that, you have to build a whole social media brand around it. It's like a pretty full-on job if you want to actually take it seriously, because so many podcasts, they do just die after a few episodes. Yeah, so many, which is why people are shocked. Oh, you're a comedian, you don't have a podcast. Like, I'd rather not have a shit podcast than, wait for the right time.
It's also a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, it just becomes another job, really. Even if you have once a week, 30 minutes. Like, ours is an hour. But even if you have 30 minutes once a week with no Patreon, that's still, like, everyone's busy.
Yeah.
You know? You don't just, like, because 30 minutes recording, as you guys know, even with video, that's more than, like, 2 or 3 hours of work. just setting up and recording, right? And then let alone the post-production.
And the editing, Mel.
Well, excuse me, I do this. Okay.
Uh-oh.
You know,
All right.
She's a social media marketer.
although I haven't done a lot, but it's fine. It's
Yeah.
I love how podcasts are different to radio because you're never supposed to reveal what's happening behind the scenes in radio. You never talk about, even you're not supposed to mention the listeners. You're just going to be like, you talk
Yes.
like, as if they're in the room with
don't
you.
break the fourth wall.
No, you don't talk about
I don't know
any...
what you call it in podcasting. There is no fourth wall, but
but
People love to be involved now, like, which is why like those models of Patreon and stuff like work, because people want to be like, I want to be part of your journey.
But it's a community, right? Like,
a community,
as you go on, you build a big enough community, which I think is part of the reason why I'm keen to do this, like connect with people. It's not just kind of talking into a microphone, which is fun as well.
Yeah. And then I mentioned to him that the Comedy Festival has live podcast recording shows.
Yes.
So now you can ticket it as well. So he is excited by that because you're going to do the podcast anyway, no preparation or some notes and things, but how you're making money by just talking unprepared. Like, that's a great deal.
We have done a couple of live shows in Hong Kong over the years with the podcast. One of them was actually a podcast festival that we did like during COVID. And it was like with live audience, and then one other time we did it as well. For actually, I think that one was like a Patreon exclusive event, which was also cool. But yeah, that would be very nice to do here.
Does that just become a forum?
You don't give the people in the audience any say, though. They're just there to watch.
No, they're just there.
Yes.
But it's quite funny because, like, to your earlier question, I think it's all just like, it all comes back to pretty much the same medium at the end. Like, we're all, like, we started with just like, we're all going to the cinema or watching TV, and they're like, oh, radio, and like, we're listening to podcasts, this new thing, but now everyone wants to see video again.
Yeah.
So it's just like, at some point, it almost looks like you're just watching TV all over again, which is such a weird, because more podcasts are now becoming video.
Yeah.
And actually, to your point, Annie, I think one part is true, which is that people want the short clips, but there's also a lot of models that show otherwise. Like the biggest, most successful podcast in the world is Joe Rogan Experience. And regardless of who he is as a character or, his content, there are objective metrics to see how much he's doing, like his views and stuff. And his episodes go up to 5 hours, and people watch it.
It's crazy.
But they're watching it video.
Yes, and people... So he just renewed with Spotify with the condition that he goes back on YouTube. Because Spotify was having his video, and he's like, no. And his audience love it. And they sit and watch. Because now it's actually... Yes, you might not sit in front of the TV watch for 5 hours, but people want that visual.
You let it play.
Yeah.
Let it play. And I've had the same thing with a much, much smaller scale, but the people that give us feedback and stuff, they're like, yeah, video will give you access to a new market. Just have the whole thing on video. Have one camera. It doesn't matter. People like that idea. And audio on YouTube doesn't work. You have to have the video on YouTube.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, because we were listening to a stand-up comedy show on YouTube, and I kept checking in to be like, why isn't it moving? And he was like, it's audio only. And I'm like, it's going,
So weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always find what you lose in podcasting is facial expressions and things like that, which you can't capture, right?
It's interesting. So you don't think that live podcasting is not the way to go, but it's more so it won't be the main avenue that podcasters will get their thing out there.
I just think there is like in entertainment now, just like there is like 5 or 6 models that you can't get out of. It's like either you do a thing on stage and people will buy tickets to see, or you do a thing on the screen and then people will try to listen and then you sell ads.
Yeah.
And it's just like there isn't
that many different.
It's all the same things. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait for like holographics. When people will just pop out of your watch.
Yeah.
I think we're almost there. I mean, didn't they do Michael Jackson on stage?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Was it any good? Did anyone go?
No.
Wrong demographic, probably.
Is it because you guys think he's cancelled?
No.
No.
I think it's more my parents grew up with his music.
Oh shit! I feel so old.
I grew up with his music.
I grew up with his music.
I just don't feel like it makes sense to pay to go watch a hologram.
Yeah.
If it's well produced, I would go.
But I think
because
now
I'm a huge fan.
There was a hologram, but now we also have AI, and I think we might, can blend them together, because I think there was a Whitney Houston one too. Like, if they can actually make her say things and talk to the audience and make it fresh again, that I would want to see.
But then who owns the IP?
The family.
The family,
the
the estate.
estate. Yeah.
But look at us, so ethical. We're not like a corporation.
Well, yeah, exactly. They do really like Fast and Furious. Like the what's his name?
Paul Walker.
Yeah, if they can CGI,
They
actually used his brother though.
Yeah, his brother.
Yeah, well then, look, all
actually,
this amazing technology.
To loop back to Anthony Bourdain, there is a Netflix documentary on him called Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And in the very last few seconds of it, they used quotes from his book, with his voice AI. And it was quite very weird because it sounded because he used his inflection. He has a very distinct inflection, and you can't tell. You really cannot tell that it's not him. But it's also his own words, so it didn't feel like it's too like weird or unethical. He just his own words, but yeah.
Maybe the future is actually that you and Vivek no longer host the podcast. It's AI versions of you, and you have so many topics that
we're
you've
just
covered.
writing them.
Yeah, and
we're
it's
just
like
giving them the script.
Oh
Exactly.
man, you wouldn't even have to write them anymore.
Oh,
you just let the AI scour the internet for what people want to hear, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would love that.
But you just receive the money. That's all.
Yes, exactly.
But the issue will be anybody else can do it too.
Yeah,
It's
true.
the same software.
Yeah.
So the next kind of topic that I'm interested, like now that we've got an understanding of like the sort of the very career paths that both of you are on, something that I recently saw on either Insta Reels or TikTok or whatnot, it was basically this one dude who is Australian, went to America, and then he was saying how, based on his experience of both the US and Australia, the biggest difference for him would be Australia's tall poppy syndrome culture kind of thing. That's basically when people put you down, when you are trying to succeed at something or you're successful at something in Australia. And the term basically comes from, if there's a field of poppies, people are trying to cut down the taller flat poppy.
Is that where it came from?
Yeah, just so that you're either the same level or below the level, whatnot. And I'm really curious now that both of you, given you're in such unconventional, but you're in the public eye sort of career, whether you've experienced that here in Australia, Annie, and probably Mo for you, whether that's something that you've heard of in Egypt or while still in Shanghai.
It was probably last month. I remember the exact moment of explaining this to Mohammed. We were walking up the stairs to his house, and I was going, tall poppy syndrome, Australia is full of it. And I'm going through it as well, and this is what part of the reasons why next month I'm going to move to Hong Kong as well, is that, you feel like you've reached that ceiling. There's a lot of tokenism here in Australia in the entertainment industry, so I've been hustling very hard for very limited opportunities, and when people see you succeeding, they also don't like that, especially if you're Chinese and you come from an Asian background. There's still that racist mentality of, they're hustlers, they're business-minded folks, they're taking opportunities that are meant for us, and they know how to make money. So I feel like I'm gonna go back to where I came from, I guess, like the cocoon.
China.
And see what happens there, because it is a smaller pond, and I do feel like, okay, then I can be the big fish there and see what happens. Like my goal, I would love to open for somebody big, like a female comedian. I just want to do like one good opening tour set, and then people will probably take me more seriously back home. So you're gonna jump back in and see, if things get better. And also like America, there's the audiences are different. I think they instead of coming out on stage and the audience goes, show us, are you funny? I don't believe it. Like, we'll see. We'll be the judge of that.
And probably being a female as well, not just being like an Asian comedian, like just being a female person as well. Like I wonder whether they'll have a sort of expectation of what you're gonna say already, right?
Yeah, as a female person, my experience has been quite different. I actually, as a non-native English speaker, the first time I heard tall poppy, I thought it meant puppy.
Brian Aristogata has a bit on this.
Oh, does he?
Too. Yeah, he's like, what do you mean? Like, puppies are coming out of the box and you just like chomp them. And he, for ages, he thought that, they're decapitating puppy.
Yeah, I just thought like, I didn't even know it means like cutting them down. So I didn't even go this far. I
didn't know that either.
ChatGPT help, thanks.
I didn't even know it's like, what is the problem with a tall puppy? Like, why do you guys hate tall puppies? Is it like... So I didn't even get the concept of the saying.
Only dash hounds in Australia.
Keep them low to the ground.
But now that I get it, I think there is a lot. Like back home, especially in Egypt, because it's a very traditional kind of society. And I would imagine it goes back to what you were saying about like the defined careers for people. So I'm like telling jokes for a living, and everyone's like, oh, you think you're better? Like, you think you can... It's not just the jokes, but like, you think you can not do the things that we do and suffer through and then make a living or be happy? Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's similar, but same applies to the same concept. It's like, how dare you do something different and be okay at it
and survive
survive,
and
basically,
thrive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
And even the family sometimes can be like this. Going back to your questions about like family accepting stuff like this, they wouldn't judge you the same way, but you'll be like, why aren't you not doing the thing that everyone's doing?
Doing the thing that fits into the box of what we expect from you.
Yeah. But I've always, like, in my life, I've always done that, whether it's leaving to China. Like, Egypt also, like, people from the Middle East would come to Australia, or immigrate to Australia, or immigrate to Canada, or Europe, or America. Those are the places that make sense for immigrants. I just went to China, where no one goes to China from Egypt. But, like, all the following my career or my life trajectory, it's always been, like, just like a weird, odd choice that doesn't make sense to everyone else. But it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Well, Shanghai would have been a great place to start.
Exactly.
And Hong Kong is a great place to be.
Exactly. So I've been, like, kind of ahead of
the game.
Yeah, well, now, right? Whereas 12 odd years ago, people might have been saying, I'm sorry, where you going?
Oh, the funniest thing is that, like, when I moved to China 2012, my friends from back home, they literally made fun of me. It's like, oh, China, like, what are you going to do? And, like, all this, like, racist jokes as well. But then, like, and I said I will teach English, because that's actually what I was doing at the time, teaching English in China. That's how I got to China. And they're like, what do you mean teaching it? That's such a stupid job, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, a few years later, when the economy tanked, they're like, can you please find us an English teaching job? Like, anything to get us out of here. I'm like, all right.
Well, how did you, I'm interested to know, right? How, because again, I'm still in that corporate job. That's what I do for a living. But, you know, how did you block out the noise to keep doing what you're doing? Because it can be hard, right? To hear negative feedback.
Especially when you put in your hardest and like you're the most on display in comparison to all the corporate sluggers out there.
I don't think it ever goes away. I was going through this yesterday even. We had a reviewer in, and right beforehand I was like, last night was amazing, but I watched the video and I don't think the crowd was too generous and I don't deserve that. I should work harder, be better tonight. And then he was like, why are you self-sabotaging with this? The criticism is only coming from you, not even anyone else directly. So it's a constant battle between, I think the hardest thing, and so many comedians drop out because of it, it's that mental game. I think if you just keep at it, and even if you are average, from being average, you will succeed because everyone else just drops out. Yeah.
You can be
tough.
good by default.
Yeah, we have Stephen Bradbury, which you wouldn't know, but he's an Australian Olympic gold medalist in some kind of skiing. No, ice skating. I meant like the ice skating, like
and he's the one that everybody...
everyone fell down. He just skated through.
There you go.
He's famous.
That's hilarious.
So, have you seen the video?
No, but
we've got to show you the video.
Yeah, that's very funny.
Stand-up comedy.
Yeah, that is stand-up comedy. Yeah, I agree.
That's not just stand-up comedy.
It's podcasting too.
But it's also it's actually corporate careers too. Just recently, a couple of my friends from a team in a company, not a great company, not a great team. So a lot of people started dropping out.
Amazon, Google, I'm just gonna throw you all over. Yahoo, Facebook.
Nobody reacts.
But
Melbourne Comedy Festival. Keep going.
But essentially, because all these people started dropping out, come promotion time, they got promoted. And so they're like, I'm staying because obviously
that's so funny.
Everyone else dropped out.
Yeah.
So
persistence.
Yeah.
Not like working super hard though, you know.
Well,
you
of course, right?
I think, I in my mind it works a little bit differently, but it ends with the same result because growing up, I'm quite an observant person. Like growing up, I have seen like people, you will never satisfy everybody. Yeah. And usually when you're growing up, you try to please your parents, right? Like as a kid or whatever. But I'm seeing everyone around me and their parents, so for example, if my parents are telling me this is a successful, your cousin, right? That's the joke. Like your cousin is always doing better than you, blah, blah, blah. But then I go to my cousin's house and his parents are not happy with him. And then a rich person, or a famous person, I get closer down like, oh, your parents are not happy with you either. And the lesson here is like, no one is ever going to be happy with you. Just do whatever the fuck you want. That's it. Like, so I don't have to justify my choices to anybody anymore because no one will get it. So I might as well just do what I want. That's it.
I'm actually really glad you went down that route, because how we like to round out our show is a bit of advice that you might give your younger self. And so you were having a chat around, just go to the fuck you want.
Yeah.
True. Do it.
Yeah.
Is that the advice you'd give yourself 10, 20, 30 years ago? Or, what?
Yeah, probably the things that I would hesitate back then is like, oh, I'm so scared. Like someone either will judge me, or I'm afraid of my parents or society or anything. Just do it. Just do it. It doesn't. Because that's kind of my point, is that if you do follow, it's kind of like the joke you might have heard, like comedians from like immigrant backgrounds making that joke. Is like, oh, my parents are pushing me to get a partner, like get married. Once they do that, they're gonna be like, where is a child? And once you have the child, it's like, where's the second child? It never ends. It never ends. So
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure we all do, right?
Yeah. It's just like you always pressure. It's not just the parents. It's like if the parents are super happy with you, the society is gonna be something like, oh, your car is too old now. Your hair is too long. Like it's anything.
Exactly, living in Malaysia. That's it.
Yes,
right?
and again, because we have the same background. What car you drive? I used to have long hair. I've always had long hair.
Should have kept it.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Remember?
No, I was making him bald.
Pulls it back.
Yeah.
Pull it back, but also when I cut it, I also cut it because I got bored and I live in a humid country.
Yeah.
But the point is that like having long hair, again, why do you have long hair?
You get criticized.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So that's the advice.
Say people will talk, right? Fuck it.
Exactly. People will talk anyway, and they will never be happy. You will never get a point in your life, and this is for any young person watching. You never get a point. It's like everyone's like, he's here! Male wife! His parents are happy, he has gorgeous kids, someone will be like, this guy's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
You can't please everyone.
Yeah.
No, you can't please most
They're
people.
gonna be like, he's so arrogant. Like, what, he thinks that we're gonna clap for him. Alright.
Yeah, anyway, that's it.
Well, that's tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, literally. For me, I wish I'd known that your life is going to turn out even better than you could ever have imagined. Like, so many awesome things are going to happen, and you're going to meet your heroes, realize some of them are whack, and not want to be those heroes. But you will, so many amazing things will happen. I have done way more and achieved way more than I could have thought when I was 16 going into comedy. Yeah. Even making it a career, I didn't believe it was ever going to be a thing. Yeah.
I met her heroes and they are whack.
I was actually like, is that
I'm
another
going to start
story in
listing
itself?
names now. And you're just I met her last night.
She was box over your mouth.
Yeah. There you go. Some editing work for you. Make it look real.
And lastly, last plugs on any sort of things that you're currently working on, the podcast you're on, whatever you want to plug.
Continue my growth on Instagram. So head there, Annie Louie on Insta.
Yeah, start my growth on Instagram. The other Muhammad. That's it. Ho Hong Kong podcast. See us live wherever we are in your city. Thanks for having us, guys.
We've really enjoyed having you on the show. Again, you've got another couple of days with your comedy show.
Yeah.
Yes, depending on when this drops. It could be tomorrow. It could have already happened.
Yeah.
We could be gone. We could
Yeah.
be in Hong Kong
You could be in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
when are you flying to Hong Kong?
Around the 6th of May. Yeah. So
Pretty soon. About
Pretty
3 weeks now. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. We go to Sydney first too, and then you're in Sydney, 2nd and 3rd of May. Come to watch our show.
Get on it.
Yeah.
Thank you again, all. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And guess we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
I'm gonna do heroin now.
great.
Yay.
Do you say heroin?
What's your question?
What is tall poppy syndrome?
Tall poppy syndrome is when people criticize or bring down those who are successful or prominent, often out of jealousy or a desire to level the playing field.